You can get excellent performance out of the Sony a6700. This shot, for example, is at 10,000 ISO, and the closest thing I have to a key light is a street light that's about 50 feet away. And look how clean this looks. I'm gonna show you what works well for me to get consistent results in low light situations. It comes down to three simple things. The first two are kind of obvious, but I do have a few tricks that you might not know about. They're gonna make a pretty big difference. And the third one was a huge aha moment for me. When you get them right, you'll get footage that looks like this, even at those higher ISOs. When I first started shooting videos way back with the A7 III, I kept seeing people getting amazing low light videos, and I was rarely making mine look good. I'd get lucky sometimes, but I was rarely able to have a repeatable outcome. So I got a little bit obsessed, and I spent years identifying the main factors that led to finally getting repeatable and great looking videos out of Sony cameras in low light environments. And I'm gonna share those with you today so that you too can get great results with your Sony a6700. The first thing that will make or break your low light videos, or photos for that matter, is exposure. Regardless of what picture profile I'm in, I use the method I'm about to run through with you, and the results have been really solid. Whether that's no picture profile, or S-Cinetone, or S-Log3, my go-to method for nailing my exposure for consistent results is using the zebra method. It's really simple, and through a lot of trial and error, I've found that it gives me far better results than the other popular method, which is overexposing to, or exposing to 0.0, or overexposing to plus 0.3 or plus 0.7 or plus 1.3, or whatever other overexposure values are being thrown out there right now. Here's how to do it. This is the Ansel Adams exposure chart. I'll include a free link down below if you want your own copy. Anyways, it represents the values that we want to expose things to. This is all gonna make sense. It's a bit complicated though, so let's simplify it and only look at the skin tones and the brightest highlights, as those things are prevalent in the majority of the shots that we're getting. Next, identify the zebra settings on your a6700. I've custom mapped the ability to toggle zebras on or off to this button here. And then I've custom mapped the level that I'm setting the zebras to when they actually start to show up on the back of the camera to this button here. The nice thing is that those zebra values match the chart perfectly. Let's say that I have this skin tone in the shot. I'll simply set my zebra level or my zebra value in camera to that exact same number from the chart. And then I'll increase exposure. In this example, I'm just using ISO, but I'll increase exposure until the zebras just start to appear on the brightest part of that skin tone. And then I'll pull back by just one ISO click, and that will be my exposure. And if I don't have a skin tone in the shot, I'm just gonna find a light, like a practical light that's in the frame. I know that light would represent the brightest highlight in the scene. So I'll set my zebra value to match the chart, which would be around 100, and then do the same method of bringing up the ISO until the zebras just barely start to appear on that highlight, and then pull back by one click. And boom, we have exposure. Look, the zebra method is not a perfect way to get exposure. They all have their trade-offs, but this has been the most consistent for me. And if you haven't used the zebra method and you're also unhappy with the exposure of your low light shots, I'd encourage you to give it a try, and I think you'll see really quickly why I use it so much. The second thing that's gonna upgrade your low light results is choosing the right ISO. In short, increasing the ISO on the camera is gonna introduce noise into the image. It's also gonna potentially do some color shifting and overall make it a lot softer. And these are the things that are gonna make your low light videos not look so good. But there are a few things that we can do in camera using higher ISOs that are gonna clean it up. The Sony a6700 performs really well in low light situations, especially for a crop sensor camera. And one of the main reasons for that is it has what's called dual baseline ISO. Let's break that down. Just for a moment, let's pretend that the a6700 only had one baseline ISO. What is a baseline ISO? Well, first off, every picture profile on the camera is gonna have a little bit of a different baseline ISO, but generally speaking, it's the lowest ISO that you can use for that picture profile, and that lowest ISO is also gonna give you the best performance, meaning a lot less noise than the higher ISOs. So for the a6700, and staying with this example of only having one baseline ISO, we'll talk about the second one in just 1 second. When I increase the ISO gain, the noise would simply increase for each increased ISO value. So if I wanted clean photos and videos, the lower the ISO, the better. But when we're in low light situations, we typically have to shoot in higher ISOs, and that's where the problems come into play. Enter the benefits of the feature that's called second baseline ISO. A second baseline ISO allows us to get a low noise performance reset at a higher ISO value than the original first baseline. And the second baseline ISO happens to be exactly 5 clicks above the baseline ISO. Easy to remember, isn't it? 5 clicks, let's break that down. If I'm in S Cinetone as an example, the first baseline ISO is 125. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 clicks, and we're in our second baseline ISO, which is 400. And for S-Log3, the baseline ISO is 800. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks on my ISO, and the second baseline ISO is 2500. I'll include this free chart. I'll put a link down below if you want your own copy of every single picture profile baseline and second baseline ISO in the a6700. So I'm in S-Log3 here, where we learned that 800 and 2500 ISO will be our best performers in terms of having the cleanest videos and photos. This means that I'd rather shoot at 2500, even though it's technically higher than 2000, because ISO 2500 will have better low light performance. So because we get that ISO performance reset at that second baseline ISO, as we increase the ISO from there, we will start to introduce some noise. But can you imagine how noisy it would be without that second baseline ISO reset? What this essentially means is that we can shoot at higher ISOs and still get a really clean result. With that being said, I typically won't shoot over 12,800 ISO in the a6700 because the image starts to fall apart a little bit and might not be quite usable. The final component that's working really well for me to get ideal results in low light situations with the a6700 is actually in the color panel of our editing software. Okay, I'm in Premiere Pro here, but the concepts that I'm gonna review are universal for whatever editing software that you're using. And the amounts that you'll make these tweaks are gonna depend on your shot. But generally speaking, here's what you're gonna wanna do to reduce the noise in your low light shots. I'll bring the contrast up. The shadows are gonna need to come down, and the blacks are also gonna need to come down a bit. And yes, this does mean that we might be breaking a rule here. That rule being over here on the lumiscopes, we're not gonna want too much of the data being pushed down to 0 because we're essentially losing detail in the shadows. But what that's also doing, it's gonna clean up the blacks and the shadows of our shot and make them a lot less noisy. So in low light situations at higher ISOs, I almost always have to choose, do I wanna pull the blacks down and make it look nice and clean? Or do I wanna keep them high and not break that rule, but have a lot of noise in the shot? And if that's my choice, I will bring those blacks and shadows down every single time. So I want you to pay extra close attention to the shadows of this shot, because here is what we're left with after making those adjustments in our color panel. And because y'all are probably gonna ask anyways, my settings when I'm in low light, I shoot in XAVC-S 4K, and I'm usually in S-Log3 with the S-Gamut3 Cine color profile, because I think S-Log3 handles the higher ISOs the best. And my ISO level is a range from 2500, and I won't go higher than 12,800. So now you're a low light ninja with the a6700. But what about getting good slow motion or really good talking head videos or vlog style shots, or what some might say all of the cinematic settings in the camera? I've got your back. You want to check out this video where I dive into all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. See ya.